Morning. Good morning.
Hi.
Morning.
Hi, good morning.
Buenos dias, and also bon dia. I think I should also say bonjour, maybe, because I believe there are also some reporters from Canada as well as from France. But before we go, my name is Michael Chen. I'm the Director of Corporate Communications for Latin America and the Caribbean. And today, the arrangement is basically the following. So for the first 40 to 45 minutes, we're going to have the tour of the exhibition hall, which is Darwin Hall. This hall is going to give us, I think, a big picture about not only Huawei, but also the industry as well, actually, about ICT sector. And then after that, we're going to have the media roundtable with Paul Scanlon, our Chief Digital Transformation Officer. And then before that, so before I give the floor to JF, who is the Vice President of Corporate Communications at Huawei, and who is going to give the tour today, I would like to remind you that if possible, please mute your microphone. And then only during the Q&A session that, I think that you can raise your hand and ask questions later. But when we come to that, I'll let you know. Of course, feel free to interrupt, during the course of the presentation here with Jeff. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Right. So Michael, it's nice to have you here in Shenzhen. Michael is actually right behind me here. We used to sit side by side for about 6 months, and he's been away in South America for 6 to 8 months now. So it's a small world at Huawei. We're here in Darwin Hall. This is a brand new hall. There's been less than 15 groups that have toured this hall so far. Please mute. Thank you. There's been less than about 15 tours have seen this, 15 groups have toured this hall. My name is JF Tremblay, JF standing for Jean-François, and I'm in corporate communications here in Shenzhen, Huawei. And before that, I was a reporter like you were, but a reporter in science and technology publications. Brief introduction of Huawei. Not everybody's familiar with it, and it's just behind me here. So Huawei has annual sales of over 120 billion US dollars per year. Our R&D budget is around $20 billion per year. That's $100 billion over the past 20 years. We're among companies, we're number 3 worldwide in the size of our R&D budget. Roughly half of our workforce is technical. 15,000 of our 200,000 staff are engaged in basic R&D. And we are the leader in 5G patents, global leader in 5G patents. So for the next 40 minutes, here's the outline of the visit. I'm going to first remind you how technology is more than ever embedded in our lives. And this is a trend that's going to continue. Then we'll talk about optical network technologies, moving on to wireless network technologies, and after that, cloud storage. That is about it. You will learn a lot. And why you will learn a lot, please mute. Thank you. Why you will learn a lot, because it's me that's explaining, who's explaining, and I think I explained very well. So what we have behind me is a window into the near future. You saw the butterflies come behind me. These kind of things will be happening all the time. Once we have AR and VR, the VR glasses, the prices are coming down all the time. AR, augmented reality, is going to become ubiquitous. And we're going to be, as consumers, as individuals, interacting with technology on a constant basis in our daily lives with AI, our sidekick at all times. Okay, so that's us. It's a very quick visit, I warn you. You're gonna learn a lot. So this was just the consumer part of technology. Now let's move to the industrial part of how technology is changing industry, digital transformation. Huawei has a lot of partners to help the company to achieve the digital transformation of many industries around the world. And this is some of the examples of the work of our partners. I won't go through everything, but we have AR, industrial AR glasses. It's too bad you can't be here and touch them. These things look like they do the job, but to the touch and feel, they don't feel very expensive. So if a worker damages them or they drop or something, it's not a major loss for the company. We have something, the label here says flame-proof CPE, but I think it's actually explosion-proof because that thing is extremely heavy. A CPE being a receiver for the 5G signal. How can the signal come through this thing? The antennas are coming out from these bolt holes here. And here you have a casing for a high definition camera connected to a 5G network. And this is what allows you to do the automation of many industries, such as mining, for example. And this is also a mining tool. Okay, obviously Huawei is based in Shenzhen, as I mentioned earlier. Shenzhen is trying to be the technology showcase of China, and Huawei is based in Shenzhen, where the bulk of our sales force here. So Shenzhen wants to adopt technology, wants to be a showcase, and Shenzhen is here. So many, many sales opportunities in Shenzhen, and this is what it looks like. So Shenzhen has a 5G smart airport. The smart stadium, the main function is that it's very, very easy to do high definition live video broadcasts. You have a fully automated container terminal here in Shenzhen and a lot of smart factories. This is a fast visit. We're gonna move directly to smart manufacturing now. This is one of the examples in the poster that was right there. So, okay, look at this mess here. It makes no sense. I will explain it to you. It's very, very simple, you're gonna see. This whole thing here is a simplification of a Huawei mobile phone production line, okay? So under one roof, we have, this is very long, by the way. It's about roughly 100 meters long in real life, maybe 70 meters in real life. I've been there. So this is obviously a simplification of the whole thing. And what we have here are actually two factories. And we have these helpful guides here. So you have the old factory here, which we don't operate there anymore. And here we have our new factory setup. Now, there's a lot of similarities between the old and the new. If you're very observant, you already noticed that there is this here. There's a rack of cable here. Mute, please. Please mute. Please mute. Okay. Please mute. Right. So the rack of cable, the problem when you rearrange all the equipment, everything, and
okay,
that takes a very
just
long
1 minute.
time.
Just 1 second, please. I'm going to mute all, but I'm going to give the microphone to Jeff.
Okay, you done?
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
All right.
Please.
All right. So when the equipment is moved, let's say we change the model of the mobile phones, we have to rewire everything. And that's not just Huawei, it's every manufacturer in the world. So one day we had to do this, we had to rewire everything, and we switched the production line to 5G. And it's a lot neater, and now we don't have to reinstall all those cables anymore. Okay, so this is a smart manufacturing. manufacturing unit. I'm going to try to start it up. It actually works. This thing, all the parts move here, and I hope I can make this work. Yes, started to move. Yes, it started to move at the end here. So in smart manufacturing, you have a lot of sensors and a lot of high definition cameras, and the sensors tell you when you need to do preventive maintenance. So that way the production line never shuts down. And you also have high definition cameras inspecting the production flow all the time. So if there's a problem or if there's something needs to be rejected, it's removed from the production line as it moves along. Another thing that you're gonna see here in a moment, you're gonna have kind of a dance of robot. It's very, very hard to make several robots work together. When you go to a car manufacturing unit, you're gonna see that one robot does one thing, another robot does its own thing, but they don't work together because it's extremely hard to network several robots to work together as a team. This is a simplified reproduction, but you can also do this in a much more complex environment. And you have the factory manager sitting at its office, and it's got the information on everything that's going on everywhere in the factory. And let's see, we are pretty much done here. So one of the advantages of 5G is that it allows for an extremely high density of machine connections. And it also has obviously a much longer range than, so this is a simplification, obviously it's not a real mobile phone. So it has a much longer range than Wi-Fi. All right, so let's move, we have another interesting display here. We tried to make things interesting to look at. This is a fully connected port. Uh-oh.
I have a question.
Looks like the power is off. Okay. No. All right, so it's a fully connected harbor. What happens when it works is that the container is matched to the truck automatically with high definition video cameras that can read the numbers on the container and can read the numbers on the license plate of the truck. And then this is matched together without error. And instead of having a crane operator sitting all day in its cabin, except when he needs to go to the bathroom, which is a big problem because you have all these stairs here, you have instead a fully automated crane here. Now, this is not actually extremely complicated to build something like that, but there are two ways you can do it. If it's a new container terminal, you would build it with fiber, optical fiber in mind. If it's a retrofit, it's then the best way to retrofit is with 5G, because then you just stack the 5G equipment on top, whereas fiber, you need to dig holes into the ground, trenches. So this brings me to the topic of optical fiber versus 5G. We have 5G now. Are we gonna stop using optical fiber? A lot of people are confused by that. And the answer is that it depends. It depends of your situation. When you can, whenever you can, fiber is the best choice. Why is fiber the best choice? Because it has the lowest energy consumption per bit. It's got, it can carry an almost infinite amount of data for the same cost. And so it's the greenest solution is fiber. It also has the lowest latency and the largest bandwidth. Now, you may have had a bad experience with fiber. You were somewhere, it was connected to fiber and Wi-Fi, and it was slower than your mobile phone. And then you say, well, optical fiber is not what it's cracked up to be. There's no benefit to optical fiber, actually. I prefer to have my mobile phone. That's because somewhere along the way, your optical fiber was connected to an electrical part somewhere or electrical wires, and then it slows right down because optical fiber, it's light moving at the speed of light. So it's instant from one part of the globe to the other part of the globe. But if it hits some, it goes onto some electrical lines at one point or another during its journey, your data will be tremendously slowed down. Here I have some parts belonging to a switching gear. That's when the data changes direction from your city to another country, and then another city in that country, and then to another neighborhood. So that's switching gear. This is a part from a traditional electrical switch. So you can see that there's electronics in there. Electronics means electrical. Electrical means slower than the speed of light. So you're familiar with this. You've seen that a lot. Now I'm just gonna show you some key parts of an optical switch. Some of the key parts of an optical switch look like this. So as you can see, this is totally different from electronics. It has nothing to do at all with electronics. So this is a kind of system of mirror. Why is it a system of mirror? It's because fiber, as I said, carries light streams. And when you have it change direction, you use stuff like that, and you use stuff like that. These are strands of fiber here. If you can think of it as an extremely complex highway exchanger. So Huawei is a pioneer of these fully optical switches. And I believe we may still be the only company in the world to offer entirely optical switches. Now, so that's the behind the scenes stuff. Let's get closer to the neighborhood. One of the problems with fibers, having a fully optical network, another problem is that it starts from a central office, which would be like a big piece of infrastructure. And from there, all the fiber starts. And it can go for tens of kilometers. So that means that installing fiber in a country, in a state, in a city, that's a big job. Huawei has pioneered a new way to look at this, and this is quite important. We have developed a way to use the cell network. So there is a network of cells that cover, like, wherever there are people, there are cell towers, right? So, and those cell towers are connected to something good. Ideally, it's fiber, but something good and fast to connect. This is an antenna, by the way, a simplified cell antenna. Very, 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 very simplified. So this antenna is connected to something, right? It's not just standing by itself in the middle of nowhere, connecting to your phone in its own little world. It's connected to the rest of the network, and it's connected to something that's very high capacity. All we've done at Huawei, but nobody had done it before, and we may still be the only ones that have that, is to add this box here, which is called an air pawn. Air like the air that you breathe, pawn for passive optical network. This box can serve 1,000 homes. So around a cell tower, there may be 1,000 homes. And that's a much more efficient way to deploy fiber through a neighborhood. We have a bigger box, it's got more capacity. Little parentheses, and this is gonna play with your mind a little bit. I said that the antenna was connected to the rest of the network by fiber. It's not always the case. Sometimes it's very, very hard to connect an antenna to fiber. And so most of the antennas in the world, mobile phone antennas, are not connected to fiber. They're actually connected to high capacity microwave antennas. Now, the microwaves do not connect to your phone. The microwave antennas are designed to connect to the rest of the network. Microwave can carry a very, very large amount of data extremely fast, almost as fast as fiber, not quite as fast, still, it's a very, very good quality connection. And so if you think of it, these antennas are connected wirelessly. And from those antennas, you have fiber. So it's a wireless network providing a fixed solution, which is kind of odd if you think of it. Right, now we get to the home. Connecting fiber to a home, the traditional solution, it involves unsheathing cables, the fiber cables, and then connecting them to another part of the house. And that takes roughly 90 minutes. Once fiber leaves the air pond, comes to the house, arrives at the house, there's a technician who needs to spend 90 minutes to actually connect the fiber to the house. Well, this 90 minutes, we decided we don't need it. We came up with these boxes here. It's called Quick ODN. And it's just a system of plug. So instead, you just plug the fiber, really. And okay, I'm gonna fumble now. Oh, I forgot. Yeah. Okay, so you just connect it, you get the idea, and then you're connected, and it's a few seconds instead of 90 minutes. This fiber Iris is a brand name. This is a way to detect fault in a fiber network. This is also a new technology that we have. So if your fiber is broken or unresponsive somewhere in the fiber network, it's a quick way to identify for the technician where it's actually defective. This didn't exist. This is very new, and it consumes no power, actually. It's pretty amazing, and you can identify the fault between 2 points of contact. Okay, so you've reached the home, you're connected to the home, and now you're inside the home and you have your Wi-Fi. Let's say this is a big home. Let's say you have a Wi-Fi here. This is heaven. You got fiber, you got Wi-Fi, it's heaven. Here, the Wi-Fi has to go through these roofs and the experience is not quite as good. So what we have come up with, our solution is fiber to the room. So not just to the house, but fiber to the room. And our solution, this is also very new, is to have created an extremely flexible and translucent fiber that you, even if you put it in the middle of the wall, is barely visible. But obviously you would try to put it somewhere along the edges, where it would be. See, this is pretty much invisible, and there is some here. Highly flexible. I'll remind you that optical fiber is made of glass, and that stuff is as flexible as a rubber band. Right. So I've told you about fiber, and fiber is wonderful. Fiber is amazing. I live in two places. I live here in Shenzhen. I also live in Hong Kong. My building in Hong Kong is called a low-rise. It doesn't have many floors. It's also extremely old, and the network operator, and this is true, will not come. They will not come to install fiber. They won't. They just won't. And we have terrible network connection. So next time I go to Hong Kong, I'm going to get one of these boxes and a new subscription from China Mobile. This box here called a CPE, customer premise equipment. You put it next to your window. It captures the 5G signal from outside, converts it to Wi-Fi, and you have extremely good Wi-Fi in your home. Not quite as good, as responsive as fiber. And my bill will be higher than if I had fiber, but our network quality currently is really terrible. But 5G is a very efficient technology. It can carry a lot of data for 1/10 of the cost per bit of 4G. So when I say my phone bill will be high, it won't be that high because 5G is very efficient at carrying a lot of data. Right, so we're done with the optical network. I said we were going to talk about the optical network. I'm done with that. Let's start talking about, let's go back to the bigger picture here. My colleagues in the carrier business unit have come up with this Lego town. I'm amazed every time I look at this, the time they've spent to build this. But you can see that there's multiple scenarios here. There's a stadium. There are cars, and I imagine these are driverless. Well, that's a police car here, but you could have driverless cars as well. 5G airport. So this is a whole bunch of scenarios. And our new, one of our new mottos these days is 1 + N. So we want cities and territories to operate as one connected multiple network. It doesn't matter if it's wireless or fixed. It's got to be seamlessly connected however you can do it. And obviously, if you're not going to be using fiber, for example, for mobile units like a car, then you're going to go wireless. So we're now in the wireless section. Obviously, Huawei these days is promoting 5G wireless technology. We think we're the best, but I have a chart here that will show something about whether that we're the best or not. So these are network operators around the world. And the network operators that use Huawei 5G equipment are the red. And the network operators that use non-Huawei 5G equipment are the blue. And this is the user experience, the quality of the user experience. Seoul, the red is higher. The blue is also very high. That's because Korea has the best 5G networks in the world. The deployment there is second to none. But what's consistent wherever you are is that the Huawei equipment is perceived, it gives a better user experience than the non-Huawei. I'm just going to show you quickly some of our wireless equipment. Here, this thing here is called a super blade. And this unit here can service 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G network. No one makes it as small and as light as Huawei, and that really reduces the installation cost and the time that it takes to install. And that's one of the main costs for the network operators when they upgrade to 5G. It's this installation cost and all this labor that they have to hire. This is if we have customers that bought our previous generation of super blades. Those are for the 2G, 3G, and 4G network. And now they want to add on 5G. Then they would go with this. This is a standalone. This is only for 5G network. It weighs 25 kilos, which means that you only need 2 workers to carry that to a roof if it's to be installed on a roof. And that's all I'm going to say about our 5G antennas. Let's go a little bit, let's look a bit at the equipment that supports the antenna. They're called the cabinets, and the cabinets are, if it's a tower, if it's a standalone tower, it would be located on the ground. If it's on top of the building, it would be located on the floor just below the roof. Now, our theme now for these cabinets is one site, one cabinet. So we want our customers not to have like a collection of cabinets at their site, but to have everything fitting in one cabinet. The reason for that is that our customers need to rent the space inside those buildings. And that's actually one of the main costs of operating a network. It's the rental. So all the technology that I'm showing you today, in terms of the cost structure of a network operator, however advanced it is, and however expensive or cheap it might be, in the grand scheme of things, network operators pay more for other things, like their rent, their energy consumption, their staff. So all this gear, it's in their cost structure is not that expensive. So we try to help them to save on rent by instead of having, let's say, 3 cabinets, have only 1. How do we do this? Well, for example, the lithium ion battery. Okay, so this takes the place of lead acid batteries, a rack of lead acid batteries. Why does a lithium ion battery? It's as backup power supply if there's a power outage. Now, the problem with lithium ion batteries is that they're a lot more expensive than lead acid batteries, and they tend to be stolen. In many parts of the world, these batteries get stolen. What we did is we installed a very, very effective anti-theft system on these, and our customers are sure that the batteries won't get stolen, and so they're happy to invest in our lithium ion batteries. Another thing that we have here is something called single RAN, and this thing here allows you to manage 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G network as one with one piece of hardware. And it's a bit like a computer system where one card is one network. So this would be, I'm not sure what this is, but let's say this is a 2G card, and the next to it would be the 3G card, something like that. And then once you connect this to a computer, it appears almost as one network on one screen instead of having 2, 3, 4 completely different software packages to operate each network. So one site, one cabinet, that's our one of our main themes for this year, and that saves a lot of money in rent for the network operators, and hopefully that transfers to lower phone bills for the consumers like you. Earlier, I had mentioned the microwave that's antennas that can take the place of fiber in locations where it's hard to deploy fiber. So we have pretty much everything related to telecommunications at Huawei, from a mobile phone to, we're going to talk about cloud servers in a moment. And we also make those microwave antennas. Now, this is a new model. It's the E-band. E-band is, it simply refers to an extremely high frequency in the 70 gigahertz range and over. Now, it's a frequency that's hard to use for two reasons. It has a fairly narrow range of about 1 or 2 kilometers. Sorry, 3.5. But we've managed to increase that range to 5 kilometers. So this is not for the countryside. This is for a busy urban environment where the distances are not that long. One of the problems with the E-band is that it needs the signal to arrive on the target straight on. And if it's a windy day and the antenna is shaking in the wind, and then you got a distance of 5 kilometers, it's going to be very, very hard to stay on target. By the way, this laser here is just for the demo. It's not part of the product. So I'm going to shake this antenna here, and you're going to see what happens to that dot. This is a new technology we've developed, and it's to keep the signal always dead center, no matter what, not no matter, but to accommodate swaying. You see, I shake the antenna and the transmission stays straight on to the center of the target. And this is something that we've developed in the past few months, and it can carry a lot of data in wireless mode. And this is something that you need with 5G, because obviously 5G, it's all about creating and transporting vast amounts of data. So that E-band will be a new tool that the network, the long range E-band is a new tool that the network operators can use. Right, so I just mentioned that 5G is all about creating, generating data. So you don't need to keep all that data forever, but a lot of it needs to be stored. A lot of it needs to be processed. So the data server business is actually exploding because of all this data. And it's an opportunity for network operators. And it's also a headache because it's, again, they're going to try to minimize their cost. They don't want these data center to occupy an infinite amount of space. And they certainly don't want to have an infinite phone bill. So let's show you a bit how Huawei approaches data center. We have a Lego block approach to it, if you will. So we sell the components of the data center in prefab. So this would be like a stack of servers. And let's say that you've reached full capacity on this floor. You just keep adding. If you need more memory, you buy a memory block. If you need data processing, you buy a processing block. If you need more power for the whole thing, you buy a power block. And you just keep stacking it on like Legos. We've also thought about the energy consumption of the whole thing, the energy consumption in terms of the cooling. And we've tried to use all the elements of cooling that we could. So we've really studied the airflows so that we could maximize the amount of heat that could be cooled just by using the air externally without so much need for fan. And another thing that we've done is to explore liquid cooling. Liquid cooling, that's a story unto itself. Let me explain a bit. We've done a lot of stuff with liquid cooling. So this is traditional. This probably looks familiar to many of you. If you have a desktop computer, if you've looked inside, there's like these fan, this unit is a bit bigger because it's an industrial server, but this fanning equipment, this looks familiar, right? And it's very thick. And if you multiply it by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units that are, and the fan is on all the time, that's a lot of electricity. It's very thick. If you have all these servers, these stacks, it's going to take a lot of space because of those fans. And that's why we have developed very efficient liquid cooling units. It consumes a lot less electricity in terms of the cooling. It's more efficient. It's also a lot flatter. So you can stack more of these processing units on top of another in the same space. So you reduce on electricity with the liquid cooling, the electricity bill, I mean. You also save some footprint. So liquid cooling, 2-in-1, save on the footprint, save on electricity. This is a stack here of flash memory. And I believe that one of our first customers for this must have been a bank, because this thing has been designed with reliability in mind. An extraordinary level of reliability. So in the industry, the rest of the industry, stacks like this, they start to not operate properly once half the controllers are gone. At our stacks of flash memory, SSD, solid state drive, you can have two units that fail. Oh. Okay. Okay, you can have up to 7 out of 8 units that fail, and your SSD will still have a reasonable performance. So in a data center, SSD stacks are for the data that needs to be accessed constantly. It's constantly accessed data. So that's why you use stacks of flash drives like that. Now, a lot of the memory, a lot of the data in memory doesn't need to be accessed quite so often. And I believe that is called cold data or cold stored data. Anyway, it's data that you keep in stacks of hard disks. And I have an example here. So this is just an enormous storage of hard disks, and it looks like this. You probably know this from your computer, or you have some drive. We've all seen drives. So this is just like a lot of drives together. massive amount of storage. So it says here 2,400 terabytes of data. That would be for one drawer here. We try to make it easy for the customer. We thought of one problem is that it's difficult to fix. See, here it's easy to fix these hard disks. So if you need to access one, replace one, it's easy. But how do you repair those if there's another unit stacked on top? Well, a lot of the innovation we have at Huawei is actually some really, really simple stuff that you just needed to think about, but no one really did. And one of the things our customers like is that we do these simple things that nobody else does. And in this case, it's going to sound very, very silly, but the wonder is that we've come up with a stack of drawers that slide both ways. I know that sounds very, very silly, but this is, we're the only ones to have that. So the data servers are built with space on both sides, and being able to open the drawer both ways, it saves a lot of space and it's easy to repair. And we were the first one to think of designing it that way. And when you think of it after the fact, it sounds silly, but we were the only ones to do it. So you may or may not know that Huawei was founded in 1987 here in Shenzhen. At the time, China had virtually no phone connection. One of the lowest rates of phone connections in the world. There were no phones in China almost practically in 1987. And it's changed a lot since then. But from these roots, we have maintained a kind of fundamental connection to people who have no connectivity. And we make it our mission to connect as many people as possible around the world. And what we have come up with a few years ago is an extremely low-cost solution called Rural Star. And this doesn't provide 5G, right? This at most will provide 4G. In many cases, it only provides 2 or 3G. And we came up with that a few years ago. And the idea is that this is not for NGOs. This is for commercial network operators to be so cheap that they could commercially deploy it in isolated villages, built with fairly cheap parts. And they sell SIM cards to the villagers there. And it's not that we want the network operators to take advantage of poor villages. It's just that this is the way the world works. If the network operators can make money, they will do it. And that's a good incentive for profit. And an investment in a SIM card, if you didn't have a phone before, it's a worthwhile investment. Now we keep investing in the R&D for these things. And this is actually a model of, this is our newest model. It's the Rural Star Pro. And what we've done with the Rural Star Pro is that there used to be 3 units, maybe not on this pole here, maybe somewhere else here, but there used to be 3 of these boxes, and now there's only 1. And this is what it looks like. So this thing in real life is much bigger, right? So, and to give you an idea, this is the size of that box here. Okay, so the Rural Star is much bigger. So in that box here, we have combined, and I wrote it down, the baseband unit, the radio frequency unit, and the wireless backhaul. And we also have reduced the number of solar cells required. So this is half the number of solar cells that we had before with the basic Rural Star unit. So reducing that actually makes it cheaper. Make it cheaper means it makes it more likely that the network operators can make money by installing these things. And if they can make money, they're going to install more of them. And that's going to mean more people connected to the rest of the world. And this is true to Huawei missions. And there are tens of millions of people around the world that are using this to stay in touch. And I'm not sure if I went too fast, but that is about it for me at this stage. Michael, did I go too fast?
Sorry.
You can unmute.
No, you didn't. Obviously not. So I think it's a very good explanation and presentation. So I was wondering if you would like to join or you would like to stay, but if anybody has some questions, they can ask now. And also, right now we have with us 3 spokespeople. The first is Paul Scallon, who is the Chief Digital Transformation Officer of Huawei at the Carrier Group. And also Marcelo Mota, who is the Chief Cybersecurity Officer for Latin American region. And then we have Guillermo Solomon, who is the Chief Digital Transformation Officer for Latin America. So I think that if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, click on the raise your hand button there. And there are some rules here. I believe that it's better because since it's online, I cannot see you. So the rules go like this here. Now, first you raise your hand, and then you ask. We will, ask the person to ask the question, and Juan Carlos will be the moderator. And then at the same time, when Juan Carlos asks you to ask the question, he will ask the next one who is going to ask the question to get ready. So with that, I think that now actually I've allowed everybody to unmute themselves. So now I guess we can go ahead. Yeah.
Oh.
JC, sorry. Jeff, please go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just hoping I've got a pretty busy day tomorrow. Wonder if any questions about the hall?
Yeah, I think that I will just ask these guys to ask the questions about the hall first, and then.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I think I see one hand. It's Vladimir Rojas. Would you like to go first?
Hello. Nice to see you. Thank you for the presentation. This is a question for the presenter of the hall. About talking about maintenance, about all the equipments you have mentioned, what is the cost? Is a higher cost? Do you have any rate or a data for maintenance about the 5G technology? Because when you have a higher maintenance cost, maybe it could be very difficult to put in your home or in a company, or these equipments are just for companies or big corporations? What do you think about? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I learned in the past few days is we have formulas, very complex formulas to analyze the cost of the projected cost of wireless versus fixed. And I think actually Paul could give the much more comprehensive answer on that because I think that's his business unit. Paul, you're there? Do we have Paul there?
Yes, I believe so. But let me see.
Yeah, so 5G consumes more electricity than fiber. But once fiber it's installed, the running cost is very, very low. And we keep lowering the maintenance costs with, I mentioned Iris earlier, our new technology called Iris. And it's a very, very neat and elegant way to identify if, let's say that the fiber has been cut or bent too much. iris helps you to identify, narrow down the location of where the failure is. And so you have a more clear idea of what's going wrong. And yeah, that's was.
I'm unmuted now, so I could answer your question. Perhaps because it's quite late in Shenzhen, would you like, Michael, for me to take the questions that come from the audience, and then we can let Francois?
That'd be very kind. And the first question was actually something that you know more about than I do, because it's like this cost analysis between fixed and wireless network. And I know you have some very developed formulas on how that's done.
Yes. So
yeah, I will bow out because it's a very busy week with World Mobile Congress in Shanghai. It's a So yeah, thank you, Michael, for the chance to present today, and nice to hear your voice, Paul.
Good to see you, Jean-Francois.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff.
Yeah.
So next, shall we take more questions? Yeah, I think I see Pablo Lopez. So you can unmute yourself, actually.
Good morning. Thank you. I have a question about the R&D activities. Huawei developed the research only in China. How is the I don't know the main aspects of the R&D activities of Huawei are funded by government, are only conducted by Huawei, are developed in another countries, or I don't know if you can tell us some about the R&D activities from Huawei. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Pablo. It's a very interesting question, because Huawei operates now in about 172 countries globally, and we have about 30 research facilities, R&D facilities globally. So a lot of the development work is done in China. A lot of the research work is done in other countries. So I think one of the last things you just saw that Jean-Francois presented, he demonstrated this microwave link with the self-correction at E-band. And a lot of the microwave development research work is actually done in Milan. A lot of the radio work is done in, some of the radio work is still done in Sweden. A lot of the mathematics and the algorithmic work is done in Russia. For some of the industrial design, some of the things like our handphones is actually done in Paris. So we tend to do a lot of distributed research. And there is, of course, research still done in China as well. We tend to do the development work in China. That's probably the best way to put it. Some software is developed even in India, in Bangalore. You know, they're quite good at developing, at writing software. So it really depends on the type of business. Some of the optical work is done in San Diego, in the US. So some of the research facilities are done purely by Huawei. Some of them are done jointly with partners. Sometimes research institutes, sometimes universities, sometimes our customers from different operators.
So, do you have any other questions, guys? Please, you can click on the button to raise your hand. I'll be able to see that if you raise your hand, you'll be to have a question, be able to ask a question. And may I also remind you to identify yourself before asking the question, your name and organization. Paul, I think that maybe I can jump in with one question.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people are actually nowadays talking about the digital transformation and also the digital economy. Yes. We can obviously, as not technical people, can obviously feel that the technology is more and more integrated in our daily lives. It has a larger impact on us. Why are we seeing this, more important topic of digital transformation nowadays? What are the factors in terms of technology and also in terms of the the changes and the trends that contribute to this becoming a larger topic.
People, there's probably as many answers to the word digital transformation as there are people on the planet, yeah, Michael. But if I give you a little bit of some discussion about how transformation practically is, I think we're looking now at Latin America. Where's 5G in Latin America, or in a lot of countries? A lot of countries still haven't deployed it. A lot of our operators are still saying, why should I deploy 5G? Just take this as an example. But let's suppose we don't think about 5G for the handset. Okay, let's suppose we don't think about 5G for this. Let's have a look what just now you saw Jean-Francois presenting. He showed 5G in industry, in manufacturing, in ports, in mine hospitals, yes, in stadiums. And that's what he's just shown us in the exhibition hall. So there's a good case to deploy 5G in the industries. So whilst in many developing countries, or where 4G is still developing, there's lots of discussion, you know, should we be deploying 5G, for example, yes? Then obviously, if you want to transform the healthcare system, you really need the benefits of something like AI to support the physicians, to support the specialists. But you can't do that without data, and you can't get data if you don't have things connected. So the argument is really quite straightforward. In B2B, to transform, you need access to information. In a manufacturing plant, as you saw, Jean-Francois was demonstrating, we have cameras to look at the quality of products. We use cameras in Norway to look at the fish, you know, facial recognition of fish, to identify parasites. We look at cameras that are uploading pictures and videos of cleanliness in hospitals and in kitchens, you know, all of these sorts of components. So the way to transform an industry is really to look at, obviously, the first problems in the industry. And generally, it's about efficiency, health, safety. And that's what 5G really does. Lots of sensors everywhere in a factory, lots of sensors in a hospital, lots of monitoring, lots of videos and images being uploaded into a cloud-based AI solution. So the reason that we're able to do these sorts of transformative things now is a couple of factors. First of all, the cost to store and compute in a cloud is very inexpensive. So the costs of these things have fallen. The second component is AI algorithms. You don't have to be a programmer. A lot of it is drag and drop. A lot of the training is done by video or by association. So that makes the go-to-market of the solutions very simple. And now with something like 5G, we have the opportunity to very cost-effectively and very broadly connect everybody and everything, so we can pull the data up into the cloud and have analyzed. And it's the combination of those three, the components of those three together that really allows this transformation to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I also see some questions coming in the chat box. By the way, you can also ask your questions in either Spanish or Portuguese. We have, you know, Marcelo Mota, who can speak Portuguese, and also Guillermo Solomon, who can speak Spanish. But let's go to the questions in the chat box, I think. I see that there is one question that says, how fast will smart cities arrive in Latin America? And are we ready for that? So I guess, should, Guillermo, would you like to take that?
Yes, of course. So I'm going to switch to Spanish to answer the question and take advantage of my native language, if you agree with that. So,
okay. So how fast smart cities will arrive in Latin America? The smart cities consist of different solutions. There's no a single solution that will have the smart cities. We need, for smart cities, like not only 5G technology, as Paul said, we need IA, we need the cloud, we need Internet of Things, many video applications, and all those technologies as a whole, and also cybersecurity, of course. We do not have human beings connected, but have thousands of millions of things connected, and they can be hacked. So we need cybersecurity, and Marcelo Contra is an expert. And this is very relevant as well. Smart cities are being developed little by little. There are solutions like health solutions. There are solutions in terms of education, energy, water. Well, there's a very good combination, but what is very important to say is to visualize what a smart city is. A country will have different needs compared to the needs of other countries. For example, in Latin America, security is very important to us because many countries have security problems, also the education, productivity, agriculture, all those solutions the government will put at the top of their agenda, and what are the vertical industry that will launch these solutions through the operators and technology providers as Huawei. We have many operators in the world. In the case of Latin America, Medellin, Colombia, this is a city that has developed a lot this topic, and it has an industrial center for the fourth transformation. And this is the only city that it's a member of the center in terms of the fourth industrial transformation globally. So we have made giant steps in those countries.
I see a question here, Michael, from Antonio Franco, yes, about do you think the pandemic accelerated or delayed technology?
Do you think the...
Would you mind if I just answered this question?
Yeah.
I'll explain why I think this is an interesting question, and because it helps with another question where people are asking about, the promotion of arrival of 5G in Latin America, and even just now how fast will smart cities arrive and things like that. So if we were to look 2 years ago, and we already started deploying 5G 2 years ago, operators were still very hesitant. What's the business case for 5G? Yes, they were all very hesitant about what to do with this thing called 5G. Well, we now know 5G is cheaper than 4G, all right? It's far more efficient than 4G, and it fixes a lot of the operating problems that 4G and 3 and 2G have. But let's just think of the following. If 2 years ago, I approached any telecom operator anywhere in the world and I said, I think we can make a business case for home education, or a business case for high definition video health consultation with specialists, or patient monitoring, it would never sell, right? But today, because of the pandemic, we can't travel. Because we can't travel, we do things differently. We're interacting differently for work. We're homeschooling our children. We're providing health-based services to remote communities and to the public because we can't travel, all using technology. And we're using combinations of technology, some of which is AI-based and some of which is a bit more conventional, called broadband. But now we also see the value of broadband. There are 43 countries in the world where the governments in the middle of last year realized the value of broadband as a social product. They discounted the spectrum, or they made it free, or they made it broader, or they made it technology agnostic, so that the telecom operators could keep the population working, healthy, and educated. And I think that's really what has happened. It's changed our behavior. So going into 2021, even the pandemic will get a lot better. We'll pray for this. But what it's going to demonstrate, even if the world returns to some form of normality, technology has already been adopted and we have behaved differently to accept that change. So I'm quite confident that the healthcare systems can undergo massive transformation. I'm convinced that the education system can undergo massive transformations because of the adoption and acceptance of this technology together with the behavioral changes that have been forced upon us. So I'm not suggesting we're all going to stay at home forever, but even when we return to normal, I used to fly to Latin America dozens of times. It's a long flight from China. So now Michael can call me, or Guillermo can call me, or Motto can call me, and we can have conversations with you every day. We still need to meet to, to drink some mojitos and things like that, yeah, okay, some cachaça. But that's the principle, I think, yeah.
Oh, I think you bring a very good point here, and that I want to emphasize that in Latin America, 6% of the Latin America population, they have no connectivity. So imagine in the pandemic times, these people, they are completely excluded because actually the economy didn't stop as we have connectivity and we still can work. But for these people, as they don't have connectivity, they are in a very bad situation, right? And they cannot economically enjoy the benefits of connectivity. But additionally to that, in Latin America, there are about 40% of people that they have, they could have a connectivity, but they don't have a plan. They don't pay for a connectivity plan. So imagine we build up the networks and just half of the Latin America population enjoy it. So just half of the Latin American population, in fact, can keep working in these pandemic times. So this is why I believe that making connectivity is part of the social life, and that this is in fact explicit, specific during these pandemic times, right? The need of connectivity is the foundation of this new economic and digital world, right?
Yeah, and you raise a very good point. I remember when Guillermo and I were in Colombia quite a few times the year before last, and we were how to promote rural connectivity. Yes, traditionally, I think you heard Jean-Francois say that the cost of the rural star has been coming down, and operators can sell the SIM cards to the village. Well, I like to present what we did in a different way in Colombia. What we did was we didn't promote the connectivity. We didn't promote the rural star. We didn't promote mobile phones. What we promoted was healthcare and education to the rural population, because that's what connectivity will provide. So the discussion we had with the government is really, we want education in the village. We want healthcare in the village. Yes, it should be the driver for, as you've said, improving social and livelihoods of people. So this is the challenge that we have with the unconnected. And a lot of the problems that we have is that perhaps we're not promoting some of these innovative products that you saw Jean-Francois demonstrating in China throughout Latin America. I think that was one of the questions. How do we show people in Latin America the possibilities, not just the technology, but how to execute, how to implement, how to do? That's really what's really needed, I think. So, even here it says, how to bring 5G to Latin America when we still have 5G and we still have working Wi-Fi. Well, Wi-Fi is free, so you get what you pay for when it's free. It's not secure, and the quality is lousy. Yes, it's secure at all. It's not reliable and it's not secure. So if that's acceptable, then you don't need 5G. But the discussion, the arguments we've always been having about 5G in industry, only in industry, yes, that's a very different opportunity for driving the economy. If you pick any Latin American country, certainly all the big ones, but pretty much all of them, it's manufacturing energy agriculture and transport and healthcare. These are the sectors that need help. And that's what 5G does. Wi-Fi doesn't do those sorts of things. So we need to get the government to understand how 5G can be used in the industries for the benefit of the people and the benefit of the economy. We need to demonstrate to the telecom operators how they can deploy 5G for these industries. Then 5G is complementary to things like Wi-Fi because they're servicing different market segments.
Let me help a little bit here, Paul, by elaborating a little more. In Wi-Fi, I'm going to do it in Spanish, just to make sure that everybody understands this, because it's very, very important. Normalmente pensamos que Wi-Fi puede ser la tecnología que nos puede solucionar.
Normally, we think that Wi-Fi is a technology that can solve everything, especially in buildings. But what Paul has been explaining is that Wi-Fi cannot give you the quality that 5G can provide you. When we talk about industrial applications, and not only industrial, but also medical applications or health service applications, it's important to have bandwidth and latency, low latency, adequate things for these operations. Imagine a doctor who's operating 50 kilometers away using a robot. And if he used Wi-Fi, latency would be 300 milliseconds. To give you an analogy, latency that human beings have in our brain, between our brain and our hands, is 10 milliseconds. So maybe the doctor will operate the robot, and the robot will take 30 times more than what the physician will take to move his hand. So this happens as well with robots in the industry. Latency is very important, and only a technology such as 5G with the cloud services can give you this type of implementations and applications successfully. If we focus on productivity, it's very important that Latin America launches 5G. Why? Why is it so important? Because the gap between productivity of Latin American countries and developed countries will be much higher, much bigger. Nowadays, Latin America bases its manufacture on cheap labor. But robots are much more cheaper than humans. They don't get sick, they don't go on strike, and they will be in charge of the whole production. So it is very important for Latin America to migrate into this AI, 5G, and robotics in order to be competitive. Otherwise, we won't be able to make it. Cheap labor is not going to last forever. It is going to be substituted by robotics. So humans will no longer be needed. So it is very important for governments to understand this, especially in Latin America, and the media should drive governments by asking them when this will arrive, if this has so many benefits for the society.
Okay, thank you.
Gracias.
I think that
Yo creo que
we have more questions in the chat box. But I guess we should we go to the specific question? I understand that you have maybe addressed the question in general, but what is the key in how to prevent the arrival of 5G in Latin America? That's from Paul Lara.
Oh, yes, I see this one. Okay. Yeah, what is the key to Huawei to promote the arrival of 5G in America in times of the pandemic? If we were just to look at the requirements of the users during the pandemic, you will see that, first of all, we know about 80% of all traffic is data, and the majority of data traffic is video. So yes, you can have 4G video. I can take videos and uplink them, yes. Of course, I can download videos. But as we generate more user content, whether it's from industry applications or whether it's from consumers, 4G is not very well designed to handle this type of uplink. And 5G was designed to have almost what we call a super uplink. So in 4G, in one base station, the maximum you can get is about 75 megabits per second, maybe 150 if you have more spectrum. But 5G starts at 2 gigabits. And I was just giving an example to my son, because when I'm in China, my mobile phone gets about 295 megabits downlink and about 75 megabits uplink, just me, one user. So if we look at what can, how would we be promoting 5G in Latin America during the time of the pandemic? The very first component is the uplink capability to support the video traffic, because 4G doesn't support that very well. But you have to also think, let's put speed to the side. You have to think of 5G like a big bucket. It's a bucket that has more water in it than the same size bucket of 4G. So if we deploy 5G, we can service more users for a similar cost. So they're two direct benefits of how would we be promoting them. And where I think Motto was alluding to is, how do we provide almost fiber-like services at a fraction of the cost? A 5G base station can provide what appears to be to the home fiber-like services to thousands of people. You can't do that with 4G or even 3 or 2G, and you don't have the money because the cost to dig the roads or to lay fiber is very, very prohibitively expensive. So these are three areas and three ways that we can bring 5G into Latin America. Fixed wireless access because of its economics, better capability for most of the video traffic, and then it's a better operating model for all the other things.
And Paul, during these pandemic times, the traffic, which is usually concentrated mostly in the urban areas, actually is more evenly distributed now as the population moved to the suburban areas and also to the rural areas. In this place, usually, or they don't have connectivity, or if they have access to the mobile network, they are still using 4G. And so the infrastructure we have to provide the connectivity using 4G, if you bring 5G there, so the speeds, the experience for the end users is going to be improved. So actually, this is the advantage, because as many people, they move to this suburban and the rural areas, maybe their experience now are not that good, and we are actually working closely to telcos to improve these networks, as the overall traffic, the peak traffic in Latin America grew up to 50% in comparison to the beginning of the pandemic. So we have been doing a lot of efforts to make sure that this network can be upgraded to handle this additional traffic. And 5G, because it's more efficient, could help us, could help operators to bring a better experience to the users in this. All right.
Yes.
So I think this is another way that 5G can support connectivity during these times. Right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I see it.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I see a question here from Daniela, which also you can help to answer, I think. But
can I just make a comment about the last question?
Sure.
I think it's relevant because there's a lot of countries that are focused in intelligent cities and smart cities. So let me switch to Spanish so I can say it correctly to the media.
There are many countries that are focusing on building smart cities because challenges are bigger. For example, contaminant emissions have grown 7 times in the last years. The global electricity demand is increasing, and it will increase tremendously, 2% per year. The lack of water will affect 1 of each 3 people in each continent. The COVID pandemic is bringing a hunger crisis, not only a world crisis, but conflicts, climate changes, economic recessions are actually causing a lot of hunger to more than 130 or 140 million people. according to the 2019 report. Since the pandemic is still on everywhere in the world, so there's a need to have some medical health services. When the emergency state was declared in March 2020, virtual appointments in the US have increased dramatically, almost 3,000% between November 2019 and November 2020, according to the American Journal of Managed Care. And security, some types of, let's say, crime has decreased, but also there's tension everywhere, not only in war zones. There are some protests, violent protests in Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Central America, India, Kosovo, South Africa, Malawi. Police repression is increasing from Kenya to Philippines, and all the fragility signs are not only limited to poorest countries or marginal communities in richest cities. The movement of yellow vests took the streets in Paris, while armed strikers have demonstrated in the Capitol, in the White House, for example. So technology, not only 5G, but also artificial intelligence, video, augmented reality, virtual reality, face recognition, all these technologies, together with cloud services and cybersecurity, can help us to mitigate the crisis.
Okay, thank you, Guillermo. And I think that right now I see a hand raised, and also I see some questions from the chat box. So can we do this? First, we address the question from Peru, which asks about a very professional question about the system with the ocean storage. It says, is it software defined? And then we go to Luis Caba, who has raised a hand, and then next week I think that I see quite a number of questions, but I believe that one of the common questions I see is about the pandemic, the impact of the pandemic. So first we go to the Peru question. Is it software defined? Can anybody address that?
I'm not familiar with that question.
Okay, if not, let's do this. I think that we will collect the question, and later on, we will get back to you on that question. I think it's a very professional question and very technical.
It's very technical, specific. Yes, yeah. I'm not familiar with the we work in the carrier business. We're not familiar with the enterprise product specifically. Yes. Let's ask Luis.
Yes.
This question.
Hi, nice to meet you. This is Luis Caba from Blacksmith. And I'd like to know how Huawei transformed a problem into an opportunity, and how you are handling with some comments about the 5G technologies for those cancer and other kind of damages. Thanks.
Okay, good. Interesting question. It's actually very straightforward, Luis. Let's take the last question and move forward. So, there's been a lot of things in the news about 5G and electromagnetic radiation and all this sort of nonsense, yes? But if you have to find the facts, and the problem we see, no disrespect intended to the media, but often not all the information that's presented in the media is necessarily accurate for many reasons, yes? And so you have to find what is misinformation and what's fact. So very specifically, the definitive studies that have been done by the World Health Organization from 2014 all the way to today demonstrates and proves that there's no correlation between 5G and cancer. So there's no need to consider that anymore. You can write to us, we can give you the reference, and you can check directly with the World Health Organization. When you look at things like how does Huawei do transformation ourselves, and how do we take opportunities and things like this, Huawei is a very unusual company. We like to find a problem and fix the problem. We call it a customer pain point, yes? And that's what Huawei has been doing for 30 years. We discuss with the customers, what do you need? What do you want? What are the challenges? What are the problems? And based on those requirements, we try to find what we call as the controlling point. So, for example, we had been building very good 3G and 4G base stations. And one of the key factors in the base station, the cell site, is power consumption. So we realized that electricity is one of the most important factors. So we engineer the base stations to be very efficient, very low power consuming. And then if you look at our handphones, the first thing you want from your handphone is a battery that lasts more than 1 day or 2 days, right? So power management. So we transfer a lot of ideas from one of our industry sectors, one of our business units, into another business unit. When you saw the microwave that had the laser and self-correcting, that type of technology actually comes from the handsets, you know, when you're trying to take a video or a picture and it does the stabilization. So we take technology that we've invented here and we put it into another area. So the way we address opportunities is by very deep discussion with our customers, whether it's an industry customer, a hospital, or whether it's a telecom operator, or whether it's a consumer, because that's when you find out more about the requirements. And that's how we can focus our R&D on achieving the results and the requirements of the customers.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, sure. So I think that the next question, that can we address the question, you know, I believe there are 2 or 3 questions related to the pandemic, you know, but can we ask it in a more general terms, saying that, you know, what impact has the pandemic had, and you know, what can be prioritized in 2021?
Yeah, I did answer some of those questions in a different fashion, but I like the question from Daniela that says, you know, what lessons does the pandemic leave T20 in the framework of digital transformation in Latin America, and what can be prioritized? And I think that's particularly good. What's very clear is health, education, and jobs, right? That those 3 sectors, I mean, jobs is not a sector, but let's take health and education. Those 2 are terribly important. So I think the most important thing that we've learned from the pandemic is that we can change things, we can make targets, we can focus. I believe governments now will be focusing on regulatory policy to try to improve the economy. So they'll be looking for technology to support it because they're confident that technology can make a difference. But prior to the pandemic, we didn't really believe all those things. Certainly the politicians didn't really believe all those things. And I think everybody now recognizes that if you want a country to move out of economic crisis because of disease, then the first thing you need to do is fix the disease, and therefore you need to prevent that in the future. So I believe that we will be prioritizing healthcare for the long term, and not just the direct consequences of the pandemic, but the indirect ones because of social behavior, children, for people who've been confined in lockdown for so long. It changes the behavior of everybody. So I think mental illness is also a significant problem that perhaps has not been addressed as much as the direct effects of the pandemic. So I believe that, you know, what can be prioritized? I believe now governments will take initiatives and probably shorten the time to make policies for investment in technology that can support the economy.
Yes, I think that Paul is totally right. I will say it's 4 topics specifically that will gain prioritization. Will be security, seguridad, health, of course, la salud, education, educación, and productivity, productividad, to create jobs and boost the economy. And this relates a little bit to what Inés Nieto is asking about, because she says that we're speaking of Latin America as a bloc, but she feels that there's many economic differences between countries, and she's correct. But this is probably because of different visions of different governments. There are some governments that are more social oriented, and there are other governments that are more economic oriented. So in the case of Argentina, for instance, the government changed from being economic oriented to being social oriented. And that it doesn't mean that it's wrong or is right. It's just a different vision on how to approach things. So the countries that are economic oriented, they will target more productivity. They will target first than anything, productivity, and then probably security. But social-oriented countries will target first universal coverage for the digital transformation of the poor, the inclusion of the poor. So they will target also education and health first than productivity itself. So in the case of Argentina, I think they are right now much more focused in education and than productivity, in health than productivity, and of course to achieve universal coverage.
Okay, thanks.
One point is that
okay, go ahead, Matt.
We can understand the differences between different countries in Latin America, right? Some of them, they already bring the 5G licenses for auction. Some of them, they are still discussing the regulations for future auctions, right? And some of them, they are at early stages, still starting to discuss about future 5G frequency licenses. The point is that in general, what we can say is that beyond these benefits to the connectivity and the support during these pandemic times, you emphasized, Guillermo, about this possible boom in productivity, right? And ourselves, we have plenty of initiatives in Latin America to build up some cases like a 5G in agriculture, right? Boosting the productivity, reducing costs, reducing the usage of herbicides, so protecting the environment. Also, 5G in the manufacturing. Our manufacturing, our factory in Sorocaba, São Paulo countryside, is already automated by 5G, and we have very impressive gains. The production cycle was reduced by from 17 hours to 7 hours, and the total gains in terms of efficiency was about 25%. So there is plenty of potential, right? Not only for the general population, but also in the verticals. We have a study here together with the Deloitte Consulting in Brazil, and the year-over-year impact that 5G could bring to the GDP is over 2%. I think it's 2.5% year-over-year for 15 years. So it's a huge impact that this can bring it to our society and to the different verticals in our economy. All right. In general, what I can say is that if you compare Latin America, for example, with Middle East, with Asia, right? In South Korea, there are 180,000 5G base stations already installed. And if I compare South Korea, for example, with Brazil, Brazil overall, if you have 2, 3, 4, and 4.5G, and all the operators, the whole Brazil has just 100,000 base stations. So imagine it, just South Korea, small country, 180,000 base stations for 5G. In China, which is actually as big as Brazil, China has about 800K to 1 million 5G base stations now. Meanwhile, we still didn't start the implementation of 5G here. So what I can say is that all these benefits in terms of productivity, this is coming to reality in South Korea, in China, in Middle East, in many places in Europe. Meanwhile, Latin America still lags behind in general. Even we have this difference, I think this is a conclusion. We need to speed up these frequency auctions and the deployments in the regions overall.
Okay, I think Marta's comment in a way addresses the question from Inez Nieto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have already addressed that question for Inez.
Okay, so now it's actually in China, it's actually midnight, midnight. So it's already very late, and we have been keeping Paul up. So I was wondering, it's okay. So please excuse
he doesn't
us.
sleep, don't worry.
Okay.
He's like a machine. He doesn't sleep ever.
I guess we take one last question. Yeah,
Michael, let me take a little bit of the last question here from Carlos from Mexico, and then I'll hand it over to Guillermo and Mota to sort of add a bit more. But it's a very interesting question because this one's talking about affordability. Yes, affordability. Yes. And traditionally, when we go from 2 to 3 to 4G, the benefits have been very different. Some were designed because, SMS was introduced, some were designed to support data and things like this, but 5G is an efficiency. So whilst I can't quote or claim what an operator will do to charge for mobile tariffs for 5G compared with 4G, if we just look at the consumer market, I'm using 5G for more than a year now, and it's about 300 megabits per second downlink and 75 megabits uplink, and my latency is about 9 milliseconds, just to put in perspective. And I don't pay any more. My price for 4G and 5G are the same. But the difference is I have a better experience. And because I have a better experience, I use it more, and of course I consume more data. So ultimately, yes, I am paying more, but I am sticking with the telecom operator because of the service quality. That's not answering your question. But if we come, that's just an observation. But if we come now to the prime reason for 5G, Mota mentioned it, efficiency. 5G is 20 times more efficient, 20 times. So I don't have to get 300 megabits here. I'm probably quite happy with 30 megabits. And that means the operator could allocate the resources to 10 more people or 9 more people. So the operator has the potential to lower the tariffs if he wants to offer the same service quality as 4G, because 5G has a much bigger capability and its operating efficiency is much less. So you would expect, given that 5G is designing to improve operational efficiency for B2B, it does the same thing for B2C customers. But again, I can't quote on how an operator recovers his capital investments, yes, but it's just my comment on how different ways you can do this. And Michael, I might say good night to everybody and hand over to Guillermo and Mota. And I hope the pandemic clears up quickly so that we can all meet again in either Brazil or Argentina or Colombia.
So you do sleep, Paul?
I am going to sleep. I have had 7 meetings today, and I'm very tired. Yeah, so
I didn't know that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, Paul.
Pleasant dreams.
Paul has had a very busy day at the Mobile World Congress in Shanghai here. I think that we definitely should let him go. And
thank you very much. Good night.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, maybe we can look at the questions. I think that we have overrun by 7 minutes. I guess, do you guys want to take one last question? Or
one last question is okay, because I have another meeting in 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Okay, I guess we can take one last question. So let me take a look. Okay, I think we will take the question from Jose Ramos.
Jose
yes,
Ramos.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just quickly before the meeting ends, considering in Mexico that some major implications here are the government's visions towards the future in the economic as well the industrial sector, is there any way that maybe the private sector can acquire 5G technology in Latin America without having to wait for a response from the government? And if so, is there anything that Huawei is doing in order to facilitate this technology in the private sector? Thank you.
You mean the private sector without the operators, right?
Yes.
O sea, sin los operadores, que
Sí.
compañías pusieran redes de 5G. Companies, Marcelo, that will deploy 5G networks, he's talking about private networks, 5G private networks.
Okay.
You want to answer that, or should I take it?
I can share some comments when you complement.
Sure, go ahead.
So actually, even without 5G license, there is the possibility for you to bring a 5G DSS, which means that you can use the 4G frequencies in place, and you bring 5G technology for initial deployment. So this can be done using the current frequencies operators they already have. And specifically here in Brazil, this was already launched as the initial 5G. But the importance of these 5G DSS is that you could take, for example, one base station to a farm or to a manufacturer, and you can enable 5G DSS. So you have 4G and you have 5G, but you use this 5G DSS, the current frequency, so you have the experience of 5G, and you can deploy it in some verticals. So we did that here. So for example, in the city of Rio Claro, in the state of Goiás in Brazil, okay, we have a very nice case of 5G to the agriculture, and we are using 5G DSS. So it's already 5G, but deployed over the 4G frequency that the operator has here in Brazil. And that we were able to build up a lot of applications to enable drones to survey the crops, to the areas where you need to use the herbicides or fertilizers. So reducing the overall production cost, boosting productivity. So my point is, it's possible, you can do it, but this is in the current stage, this is not large scale. It's mainly, okay, let me build up a case for agriculture. Let me take this to Huawei factory in São Paulo countryside, for example, which is already automated by 5G. So this actually can be done using the current 4G frequencies that the operator have and using 5G DSS. Okay, so because currently the frequency in most of places in Latin America they were acquired, right, by the operators, and the operators, they have a license to use. But there is still a discussion in the future 5G auction if some spectrum is going to be dedicated to the enterprises. This is not actually defined, but it's a discussion in many places here, Europe as well. All right. So Guillermo, if you have some points to add.
Your answer is very complete. So I will have to add only that I believe that there's an opportunity. I mean, Marcelo is totally right. Right now, the deployment of the networks will go through operators. And the problem with the governments is that the governments are not as fast as we would like by assigning the new spectrum, the new frequencies for 5G. So that's is not an entire showstopper, but it delays the deployment of 5G and the adoption of 5G in different countries. But the important thing here is that whenever this happens, I believe that a new business model will arrive. And I believe that private networks with 5G will happen, especially in indoor environment. Because for outdoor environments, I think operators are more prepared than anybody else to provide the 5G service outdoors. But indoors, for instance, the government or a private company could invest or put the money to have 5G indoor in an airport, for instance. And if you have 5G indoor in an airport, you can deploy a lot of new services that will mean a new revenue stream, either for operators or for whoever implemented the technology there. So this discussion is being happening lately in different countries on how these 5G private networks will operate. My belief is that the easiest way to do it is for the operators to remain with the permits of the spectrum of the frequencies, and maybe other players will invest in these 5G networks indoors, but the operators will operate the networks. So the investment will come from another player, and the operation of the network will come from the experts of operating networks, which are obviously the operators. So this is going to be a new business model that I believe it's going to be very successful, because operators always lack of money to invest in this kind of thing. So if the regulators let the private sector invest besides the operators into these networks, this will accelerate things. This will accelerate specifically indoor coverage for 5G.
Okay. Thank you very much, Guillermo, and also Malta, for your time and also for your insights on these questions. I think that we should conclude the meeting. But before I go, I think that if you look at the chat box, you can see the designation of Malta, Guillermo, and also Paul. If you need this information, you can find it there. Also, the last one that I think that we saw the question from Peru, we will try to get an answer and get back to you. For the other questions that have not been addressed, I hope that, you know, very soon we're going to have maybe more opportunities to have conversations like this, and hopefully we shall be able to give you good answers. With that, thank you all for attending the meeting, and have a very good morning or evening. Bye-bye.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your attention. Muchas gracias a todos. Obrigado.
Thank you very much to you all.
Okay, muchas gracias. Obrigado.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.